Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Now, today I'm talking to my good friend Felix Hyde, who is one of the most extraordinary healers, actually, that I've tripped across. I've had a lot of energy healing in my time, and I've experienced nothing like this. So, without more ado, let me say hello, Felix, and welcome.
Hi, everybody. I didn't expect you to say that, but I'm very taken back by that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was really
Well,
sweet. Yeah.
there is truth in it. The kind of healing that you've developed and energy healing you've developed is very unique. So can we start by just asking you to give, a brief introduction, tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll dive deeper into how you got there and what exactly it is.
Yeah, sure. So I am a holographic energetic restructurer. So I basically look where your consciousness is wrapped up in different structures of information and structural ways of operating. And I can de-thread it and pull the consciousness out and basically realign it back to your present. Um, so what kind of goes in with that is I'll be looking at how you have fragmented interdimensionally and how your consciousness has been kind of looped into artificial intelligence machineries, which then create kind of, I would say, kind of highly polarized belief systems and highly polarized kind of behaviors. It's my job to kind of work all of that out with you and for you sometimes, depending on how much scope that you've got. Usually I can kind of just get in there and do it for you, and just basically untie yourself from where you've been bound to these kind of reversal systems and structures, and then pull you back into alignment with the source current. So that's what I do in a nutshell. um,
Oh, is that all?
yeah, it's a little bit more complex
Yeah,
than just saying it
absolutely.
is as it is, because there are kind of unravelings of your interdimensional timelines that will kind of come with that, and these kind of run with a conjunction of cellular memory that gets released over specific dates. So where we might go into Lionsgate, we might get just after Lionsgate, we've had a big dismantling of destructive behaviors. So we've gone through the ending of multiple cycles just leading up from 2024 Lionsgate through to September and then into October. This dismantling of all of these old constructs and behaviors that have been kind of implanted in place with artificial consciousness. So on one hand, it goes very, very sci-fi. Then on the other hand, it goes very divine when we're looking at the coding, we're looking at the infrastructure and looking at how your light body is actually built and
Mm.
how the light body kind of, if there's a distortion within the channels within the higher light body, how does that affect the lower body? So more recently, I think I worked with you on this one, Syra, was rebuilding the Shara complex,
Hmm.
which is we're looking at a 10th dimensional field which transmits avatar Christ, solar Christ consciousness down from the 12, 11, 10 down into the monad, so the 9, 8, and 7, and thus into the soul and personality. But when there's kind of like distortions held within there, it may be kind of trying to send bits of information in one direction, but it's actually being funneled into another direction, which then creates a massive illness because its channel is moving into the wrong direction, moving into the wrong place. So being able to kind of rebuild these light energetic highways, or these light field highways, I suppose, repositions the organic light structure and the liquid crystal light to move back into the lower body, which then accesses you into a much higher frequency. So I kind of help people kind of get these things back together. And then more recently, the with the New Earth healing templates that have come online quite strongly over the past three or 4 months, I'm working very, very much into the personality matrix and working through the areas of the personality that have split into extreme polarization, and then working to understand what this polarization is about, moving through the process of polarity integration, which is when you jump between one side of the polarity to the other until it reaches back into a 0 point perspective. And then through that synthesis, this then changes the belief systems held through those fractures and aspects held within those fractures to then rebuild the subharmonic ranges back into a fluctuation of quantum convergent starfire, which is basically a charge point which accelerates you to move from a third dimensional polarized perspective into a unification process of a fifth dimensional awareness.
Yeah. Well, there's a huge amount there. So we need to unpack some of this little by little. But basically, what you're talking about is looking at our multidimensional self. And we work over a 12th dimensional field. And effectively unblocking all of the blockages, smoothing out the bumps, etc., so that at the physical body level, which is where, you know, so many people are solely or only really tuned into, it undoes disease patterns and pictures, or it stops them developing, sort of thing. And this, I mean, we talk an awful lot and chat back and forwards about all sorts of things, don't we? But I mean, it is, and I'm saying this really for the benefit of everyone out there rather than you, so forgive me. This is so important at this moment. We are in a major transition phase, a really major transition phase, and blocks and imbalances and things out of whack and unresolved traumas, no matter whether, you know, it came in at the, you know, in your 8th dimensional self and you're here in your 3-dimensional self, it doesn't matter. That is going to be blocking your forward progress. So it needs addressing at this time. So, you know, Felix is very much working with the needs of where we are now. And even if you didn't understand a lot of what it's about, you will come to understand it in time. That's my belief. I think we are all working back towards regaining that information. But you don't have to have it pinned down now because Felix is doing the work for you, basically. I mean, what could be better than that?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely kind of does the work that way. Whenever I work with groups of people, and specifically the public, is that I always say to them at the start is you don't need to understand everything that I'm saying, because it actually acts as a catalyst and a seed point for your own trajectory of change and growth,
doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting when we're kind of looking at repairing the lower layers of the body, we're always having to jump to the layers higher to unpick the distortion within that, to allow the flow downstream to kind of make it work. And more recently, I've been kind of pulled into the God worlds and into the localized universe. So we've got like a kind of 12-dimensional layers of matter, but we've also got a parallel layer of matter. And then adjacent to that, we've got a higher heaven and a parallel higher heaven. And then through that makes a kind of locum universe, basically. So then above that, we've also got another tree of life perspective that kind of sits on top of that, that would be the God world that operates to our universe. And it's kind of within these areas is really what's kind of building momentum at the moment with the double diamond sun coding and frequency, which is then catalyzing the code release and the updates for the Christ avatar layers to build further at the moment is what I feel with that. Is not as straightforward as that, because at the moment I don't always have the right words to give it to
Yeah.
give to it until I fully integrate it.
Yeah, we are. I mean, this is information we're pulling back into ourselves, isn't it? And
Yeah.
you know, you are now working at an extremely high level. You're accessing not just multidimensional fields, but fields beyond our own time matrix or beyond our own kind of little universal town, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
You kind of move way out beyond that. So yeah, let's you know, we most of us here have a very earth-based perspective, and we don't even think of ourselves as being galactic beings, let alone multidimensional, let alone you know, talk of God worlds and things like this. But the truth is, we are that, and we've forgotten it.
Yeah.
So let's start at this very little 3D level here on the Earth. And
yeah.
just you know, give us a glimpse. We don't just a quick background as to how you got into this, because that in and of itself, I mean, how does anybody start into not just understanding but developing a healing modality that deals with this?
Okay, so
Because you're certainly not taught about it in school.
no, that you're not. Okay, so this doesn't have to be the same for everyone. I'm just going to say that right now. I went through loads of drug addiction. I went through loads of really destructive behavior because my environment I felt was really unsafe. And the trauma that I kind of accrued became projected through my actions of drug use and crazy behavior is one for a better word to say with that. So yeah, my behavior was so erratic and so wild and feral that no matter what I did, I couldn't seem to change it because there was so much kind of going on with me. My environment was really, I felt it was very unsafe, and I felt very unsafe kind of growing up. It fluctuates between kind of layers of kind of cool off periods and safety periods to kind of extreme, like, I need to leave, I need to get out of here, I'm not feeling safe in my environment. And this kind of, it wasn't just at home, it was at school, it was kind of in friendship circles. There was never any respite. So I was kind of always in a state of chaos and carnage and fear, which led me to kind of try to find a soothing point, which then turned out to be drugs and alcohol and partying, and, you know, to kind of shut down the noise. Even though you kind of go to the noisiest place to try and do that, which would be like nightclubs and all kinds of things. Now, through that period, I must have been doing drugs for like 14 years. I think I had my first.
Can I just quickly interject here?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
very quickly and say to people watching, Felix is a starseed. He's an indigo. He's one of the special people who have come here to help us through where we're at. And there are lots out there doing this who are incredibly sensitive and find coming into this chaotic 3D world really difficult to cope with. So what Felix is describing, a lot of others will have experienced as well. You have found your way out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a sabotage. It's a very deliberate sabotage to stop people like you bringing your gifts here.
Yeah.
And putting them into into service to the human race. So you know, a lot are just lost within the white noise of it all. How did you get yourself out?
So it was kind of a sort of funny story, but not really at the same time. When I look back on it, I'm like, oh wow, okay, that really is kind of amazing. But I actually went through a suicide attempt, and I when that happened, I was on loads of different mental health medications, which were the opposite of what I needed to be on. I needed to be on like a downer rather than an upper because I had so much energy anyway. And I would have been like a kind of functioning drug addict, really. So I could kind of just go about my day to day, and function and sniff cocaine or do whatever, and that I would still be able to kind of manage or take care or whatever, and I would be able to manage and function. Now, with the mental health medication, that put me in a state of mania. So they were giving me kind of, I think it was like paroxetine, which is like a kind of Prozac thing, and that sent me way up to a place where I couldn't ground. Not that I could really ground anyway, but I could never kind of find a level footing within there. Now, through that period, I think it's important to kind of raise up when you go through that mania phasing. This was also running alongside a spiritual awakening, which I'd already kind of been aware of spirit, aware of God and stuff like that. And through the trauma of my teenage years, it went away. And through layers of my childhood as well, it went away and then kind of came back when I was about 18, or no, it was about 20, 21 when it came back. Because I was at a club, I was at a rave, and my grandmother came to me and said, "You need to leave, you need to get out of this place." And then I grabbed my friends, I was crying, I was like, "Oh my God, we need to go." Don't know why. And then we got a phone call after we left, 10 minutes after that, saying that somebody had been shot in the room that we were in. Wow. Yeah, so that was one instance. And then after that, it came back on as I was really going off the rails with the drugs when I lived abroad. I lived in China. And through that period when I was on the antidepressants that were sending me up, I was also having this spiritual awakening that was triggering layers of psychosis. So simultaneously, you've got this rise and elevation in consciousness that's speeding up, speeding up, speeding up. And because you've also got this awareness and awakening coming online as well, without the ability to slow down, this creates a kind of psychosis episode that you're experiencing your own trauma coming up to be seen as you're going through a process of purge, which then, number one, that allows you to kind of separate your lower self to your higher self, because you've got this split of reality. And the one, like the higher one, is becoming more prominent, which is on a third dimensional level, it looks like psychosis, it looks like craziness, but at the same time, on a higher dimensional perspective, it is spiritual messages coming in, which is creating confusion, it's creating fear. And because there is no balance within that, the vibration that you hold aligned with those traumas, this then attracts it attracts the negative stuff that you're already kind of feeling to then present more around you, which then becomes terrifying. Yeah. So that perpetuated and carried on for a while. And then when I got back to the UK, things just did not go well. It became very hostile. I was obviously still using drugs and trying to kind of come back from such a big culture shock to a reverse culture shock after being in China for 5 years almost. Back to the UK, and then not really knowing how people have kind of evolved themselves or communicated. So you've got this big split of who you are, right? So that was all kind of going off. And then the people that I used to hang out with, we weren't understanding each other. I didn't understand what was going on. So there was this whole kind of bust up between friendships because my own behavior was very erratic and crazy, which then ultimately led to, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I am. I don't know why I'm here. Oh my God, I may as well just kill myself. Yeah. And then that led into a hospitalization, the change in my medication, and everything slowed down. And all through that process, the imagery that I kept on seeing was like an aeroplane crashing into a building. The kind of return back to kind of life, I suppose. It was a very, very slow burn crash of an aeroplane as it kind of smashed into the airport. Yeah. And that was kind of what it looked like. And so the very last thing before I did the suicide attempt, I wrote on Facebook, "You're all fucking fake. I can't stand any of you. You're all like basically lies." And obviously I wasn't thinking straight in my head. But this is the thing. It's like at the time you don't really know what's going on because you're holding on to all of these paradigms, these beliefs from your past. And even when you go away and then come back, you still hold on to a belief that this is still happening. This, like, these people are still behaving in this certain way, but it's not true.
Yeah.
So you kind of go through this big crashing and burning phasing, which then leads into a dark night of the soul. And that's kind of what happened for me. So that was the kind of story as to how I slowed down.
Yeah.
And then what happened after that was it took probably about 6 months for the rest of that year, so the rest of 2018, getting myself off the drugs. So it took a while for me to actually stop using that, because obviously you've still got this attachment to different things. And it happened on one day. I was at my friend's house at the time, and I said, I just don't want to be on drugs anymore. And I felt this whoosh of energy come over my body, and all of these behaviors were just stripped out of my field. No idea what had happened. I just felt instantly lighter.
Yeah.
And it was like, finally, we've been waiting for you to say that, to authorize this change to actually happen. So that is what happened with coming off the drugs. Now, it's, again, not as black and white as that, but it gave me a window of time to get sober and stay sober.
Yeah.
And it was the changing of behaviors within that window. I sat and I meditated for 2 hours, 2 to 4 hours every day. Just, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just lying there. I was sitting there. I was feeling, I was listening, even though everything felt very tight and very compact, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that I had to do that.
Yeah.
And that was because I didn't have any money. I didn't have a pot to piss in, as they say, or have any contacts in the area that I was in to go for healing. Then I met a guy who kind of did some Reiki for me, which actually helped me process a fair bit of stuff. And it was through that it was through the meditation plus the Reiki that this guy did for me. And then I did a Reiki attunement for myself. But even just doing that, I think that was more of like an intention to bridge the new life in, if that makes sense. So there's always kind of like a physical catalyst, a physical intention without having an intention. Because at the time we don't really know what we want or where we want to go, but we know we want change. So that's kind of what happened to get me onto the path. And then the rest of the time it was, you've just got to sit in meditation, you've got to observe yourself and just do this. And then magically, a woman called Geraldina Roscoe came up on my YouTube, and she had this 30 days of meditation. It was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I sat there for 30 days and I did it. And then I did it for another 30 days. And then I did it for another 30 days. And by the end of those 90 days, I felt such a profound difference in myself. And I said, right, okay, I'm going to do this myself now. I'm not going to follow anyone else. I'm just going to sit there and try. And it was through that intention of trying to change, because I could understand what she was saying, but I couldn't understand it. If that makes sense. I couldn't take it all in, but I just knew, okay, this is what I've got to look for. I couldn't comprehend it because my mind was a bit scrambled. And, you know, when you come out of something as traumatic as that, you don't really know your ass from your elbow.
Yeah, but you do. I mean, I call it following a frequency, or I felt it initially as a tug. It was like an energetic tug. Come in this direction, and as long as I followed that, things felt like they're flowing. If I didn't, then it all got a bit. So I mean, in some respects, yes, you don't know what the destination is. You don't know where you're going. You don't even know to ask, do you? Because you just don't have the knowledge and understanding. But if you trust your body, if you trust, that higher part of yourself that knows where it wants you to go, that knows what you're capable of, that knows what you're here to do, it unfolds before you. So there's an element of surrendering to yourself, really.
Yeah, and that's so perfectly put there, because I remember before I actually started the healing journey, I remember standing in my bedroom at my dad's house, my old bedroom at my dad's house, saying, I want to know the answers to the questions that people don't have answers to. And then within about 3 weeks, I met someone in Spain after having a turbulent holiday with the person I was with, which wasn't fun, really. And this person introduced me to Dolores Cannon. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is amazing. It took me ages to actually get into it as well. Like I resisted it, and I then ended up putting it on when I was going to sleep. And then when I was going to sleep, it was just kind of there playing in the background. And then I woke up one morning, I was like, this is actually really interesting. I was like, oh, okay.
Finally.
Finally, yeah. But I didn't clock
Yeah.
to that point back then. And I think after that, when I discovered Dolores Cannon, it was then I said, I can't go on living my life the way that I'm living. I need to be able to heal myself.
Yeah.
I need to heal myself. And it was from that that changed everything. And then through that process of identity, the death of the identity, there was so much pain that came up. I was like, do you know what, God, I can't do this. I surrender my life to you to do with it as you will. And that's it. I literally surrender myself to you. This is my gift to the world. This is my gift to God. Please just help me through it. Take over.
Yeah.
And to every day, I still say that. I still say it every single day, that I give myself to God. I commit myself to God. And that is, I feel, the ultimate kind of gift you can give yourself, and it's the ultimate kind of sacrifice, is that you're willing to surrender the whole thing to kind of come full circle. And it's not for you. It's not about your trauma. It's about returning to oneness, I think, because this world can be a very shitty place.
Yeah.
But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a way to come through it.
And you came, I mean, all of us came here for a reason. We've chosen to incarnate into these worlds for amazing reasons. I mean, we have mission and we have purpose. we just have to wake up to it. But waking up to it brings so much pain with it that it then becomes, and it is. I mean, the process you describe, it's thy will, not my will. It is a complete surrender. Then it seems to align you. And then the training begins, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
So what did that training look like?
What did the training look like? So,
how did you get into? I mean, as I say, what you do is so unique.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think how it kind of looked like, it was the first 3 years, I just had to focus on trying to get my emotional body moving.
Yeah.
Because the emotional body is the part that holds the answers and the storylines that connect the reasoning mind, the third dimensional mind, to the second. So if we're looking at this from a personality perspective, which for me, I've always tried to kind of sort out my personality, apart from it never always worked that way for me. I was kind of catapulted up to the highest point first. And then that started to kind of weave itself back down. So when I started off, it was purely about kind of getting the emotional body moving and trying to find some kind of level of understanding and identification of what it was I was feeling. So that seemed to be like the major kind of start point for me, was to just trying to make some kind of sense of whatever the hell I was feeling.
Yeah.
And I think that will be a story for everyone, really, because the sentience is the kind of driving force that carries all of the information. It carries all of the nuances, all of the wisdom within that you then use your reason to kind of patch it together and understand it, and then move through an integration. This then sends an update through to the subconscious, which holds the memory and starts to piece the memory back together. And then this updates the morphogenetic fields. So when the memory is starting to be pieced together and you're understanding the history that's kind of gone on, the morphogenetic field updates, and this starts to send charges up through the vertical pillar. I'm just seeing this as like a kind of crystal star of Azoth or a Merkabah star at the top of the 12D pillar.
Yeah.
So as that's kind of starting to engage, everything starts to spin and move itself again. Okay. And this then updates the toroidal field.
Yeah.
So when I was kind of going through that, it felt like a lifetime, because really there's so much thick information within there that we have not wanted to touch with a barge pole, because
we numb out the emotional to a very large degree, don't we?
Absolutely,
we avoid the pain, we avoid the distress.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the interesting thing now is that that's the one thing that I go in to look for the most. I'm like, oh, what's this horrible feeling all about? I want all the information behind it. And when you're kind of starting to unpack that horrendousness that's within there, you access so much of your light that's been kind of contorted and locked into kind of reversal spirals or descension, devolution spirals. That really restricts your comprehension for interdimensional awareness, really, because it holds such rigidity. So getting that emotion moving first opens the doorway for you to start understanding the storylines behind it. And this becomes a process of developing your channeling, really. Channeling your emotions into stories. And yeah, I think that was probably where I began with it. And then the next phasing of that was learning how to neutralize the emotions by using the opposite of what it's missing. Okay, so this would be a kind of phasing of polarity integration. But what we can also look at here is what you're in need of as well, is fulfilling the needs that weren't met. This starts to reparent, I suppose, reparent your fractured aspects to come change their belief systems, really. As long as you're feeding them, they've got no need to hold on to the pain because they're being heard. So then through that process, you're then developing a resonance with your inner being, with your inner child or your soul or whatever you want to call it, and understanding what it's missed out on for so long. Now, ultimately, if we step forwards maybe 5 years in time and following this same process after all of this healing work that you've done, we're then looking at the more fuller story of the behavioral pattern, taking it right back to the root, right back to the ancestral lineage. We're looking at the family implications of it. And then we're understanding from all of these different perspectives why this is in place in the first place. Now, what that does is it highlights all of the behavioral aspects from what it did to you from the root interaction, going through the teenage reactivity phasing, and then going into present day behaviors, and then how that implicates into your shadow and into your own kind of belief systems behind that. And when we get a more well-rounded understanding of that, we can talk to the belief systems and we can talk to the victim that's holding hostility and holding anger to change itself, I guess, change its way of thinking, because it can see all of these different things now. It's not, like I said, it's not a linear process, because when you're dealing with this situation, you're moving around a spiral always, and always getting different perspectives. And when you're right down at the bottom of the spiral, you're looking at the shittiest emotions you can deal with until you pull them up round the spiral to change those emotions through grief, through pain, through anger, up into understanding, into awareness, into compassion, into love, and then ultimately into joy. And the reason why we do this is to come back into love, come back into oneness.
Come back into our true selves. From these distorted
Yeah.
blueprints that we've been forced to inhabit really down here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your honesty through all of that has been amazing. So first and foremost, thank you for that. But there is so much in there that I want to go into, and we could be here for hours.
Yeah.
Can we just touch? There's several things that you mentioned that I'd just like to unpack a tad more. You talked about fragmentation of self. Just let people understand that, and then if we could just talk a little bit about AI, because most people, I mean, they'll be familiar with artificial intelligence now, but they don't know what it means in the context that maybe you and I are really understanding this, because it's been around a lot longer than the last few years, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then let's finish on talking about the new Earth, the new Earth templates, because this is where we're going. This is why we're here now, is to really, help humanity and everyone bring this in and bring this forward. So let's finish on that up note.
Okay, so the fragmentation of self, very big topic there. So if you go through an initial traumatic incident, okay, I'm just going to share my screen.
Yeah, I'm going to just interrupt you quickly. Can you just explain to them what you did there?
Okay, so that was light language, and this is it's the true language of the soul. I use it as a healing modality, but primarily I use it as when I communicate with my guides. I will ask them for things in light language, and they'll provide to me the download of information that just moves through my channel and then comes out of my mouth as I speak. So I work very much in like a conscious channeling state of self. I'm always kind of turned on with my channels, and I've always got information coming in regardless of where I am or what time of the day it is. There's always something there. As soon as you kind of sit there and listen, it's going to come in, and you've just got to kind of follow it. So with the light language, it kind of unlocks the information. It gives me the access into what I need to use to explain a situation. So I'm just going to share my screen, if I can. You might have to allow me to do it. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're looking at here is the 3 layers of the personality matrix. So we've got the subconscious, which is the root chakra, the sacral, which is the instinctual mind, and then the reasoning mind is the solar plexus. And what we're looking at here is how these 3 things work together. Now, when we have a traumatic incident, this grey box that's overlaying these 3 spheres, we've got the grey box moving through, and this is going to represent a traumatic incident that occurs with the situation that you're in. It happens directly to you, but it will also happen to the other person because they're also co-creating the experience as well. And what does this do in that traumatic experience? Well, because the emotional charge becomes so high, it creates a split between the reason and a split between the subconscious, basically separating these different layers of the mind to come into an understanding of what's gone on. Now, as that happens, we've got all of this emotional pain or anger or whatever it is that's kind of coming in here, which is overriding and dictating how you interact in that experience. So as that charge of emotion comes in when we are not self-aware, and hold my hands up, it still happens to me today, to be completely real.
Yeah, I mean, none of us are ever done with it, are we?
yeah. I mean, it comes back round always. So it's just another layer unraveling then. So it's choosing how you kind of act or react within that. So as this high level of emotional surge comes in, and the interaction that dictates how you're going to interact, because many people aren't all that conscious of their emotions and don't always have the staying power to kind of just step back and not say anything, usually because there's underlying wounds that come from that then force or initiate a reaction. So as this sets in, this then creates a split or rift by the high uncomfortable emotional threshold that sets in, and this starts to fragment the consciousness. Okay, now what happens within that fragmentation process, which I'll just jump on to this, well, jump onto this page. So the reason becomes blocked because this emotional threshold becomes so big, it takes over the conscious awareness, and we can't kind of find grounding within that space because there is so much moving through the energy system. The mind becomes destabilized and we become overridden by this charge of emotional current. So this blocks the ability to kind of see the situation clearly. And then afterwards, with the spike in energy, it creates a surcharge or a tremor that then continually fractures the consciousness afterwards for a long period of time. And this sits as a memory. And that memory, because it was painful or traumatic, then gets stored in the subconscious. So as it's being stored in the subconscious, it creates an amnesiac barrier because it's painful that then becomes repressed. So whatever is felt during that time, this guy's kind of popping off at me and saying that all these different names under the sun. This is triggering up shame. The shame is then locking down the memory because I don't believe that and I don't want to accept what he's saying. Even if it's a projection, there may be some level of truth within that, which then creates a venomous attack back, as an example.
Yeah.
So when we've separated and locked out that layer of information, do not want to look at it at all, because it was painful and traumatic. This numbs out the emotions, it numbs out the memory, and then 2 days later, you can't really remember what's gone on.
Yeah.
You go about your day, you go and get your coffee, you go and have a sandwich or whatever, and then 2 weeks later, somebody else comes in and says something similar, and bam, that memory is triggered. The emotions have heightened, and then the reactivity comes back out again. So what we can see there is the same thing happening, which then creates another charge of emotion that repeats the fragmentation cycle. Okay, now that is a very basic description of what kind of goes on within that, because when the further back we trace it, we get more to like the kind of crux issues within our history, our planetary history of what's happened within that initial state of fragmentation. But as we're looking at it from an individualized perspective, this is fundamentally kind of what happens. Now, let's see what I've got on the next page. So basically, the lower chakras become fractured. The information within those memories becomes distorted. And what happens within that, within the experience that you're having at the time, negative energy attributes come in that latch on to the nasty words that are being said, or the kind of nasty thought forms that are being thought as well. And these latch onto that and create a kind of a surplus of fallen consciousness, let's say, that kind of sits between the fracturing, and then uses that as an entry point, uses the memories as an entry point to override your awareness. And this splits and fragments the consciousness further. Okay, so by this point, you may feel like, well, what the fuck's the point in even trying, because it seems so complicated, but there is a way. And there's a very easy way to kind of deal with this, actually. It's just kind of firstly gaining awareness of the structure and how it works. That then sets everything else aside, so you can actually move through and deal with it more easily because you're aware of how it operates. So where we've got this kind of negative energy that's kind of latching in, we then have the opportunity, once we've come out of that high peak threshold of emotions, to go back and review what's gone on. Okay.
Yeah.
And how that kind of looks is we sit there and feel into what's been said, feel into how you've been victimized or perceived victimized. And then eventually you'll get to the point where you've looked at yourself as the victimizer within that situation, because we have to look at it from all of these different perspectives to understand how your words impact others and how their words have impacted you. And through this, we then start to get the fragments, these are meant to be fragments rebuilding themselves back together.
Yeah,
so where we've got
it's pulling the bits of you that have gone into hiding.
Yes,
it's pulling those back.
Yeah, exactly. So what we can see here is we've got more
wholeness.
Yeah, clarity of color coming back into the different chakras, which then create bridges of awareness between the reason to the instinct. And the reason to the instinct becomes coupled up, which then creates the memory to rebuild back into the awareness. So you'd be through the processing and the integration phase of it, you're then able to access the memory, trace it all the way back to your childhood and say, oh, actually, do you know what? This is the situation that's happened here. I understand this now. And through that, I'm just going to go to this chart now. So what we can see when we're heavily victimized, we're going to be operating from right down here in the downward spiral. We're going into that downward level and starting to understand these different emotions of how the situation made you feel or makes you feel. And then we work our way up, back into the higher level of the spiral to pull ourselves back into a state of love. So we, through that downward to upward spiral momentum, we're then getting the teachings and we're getting the understanding and the kind of, I don't want to be treated this way, therefore I don't want to treat others this way. So I'd rather treat people the way that I want to be treated.
Yeah.
And maintain that state of integrity, which then lifts us up into love.
Brilliant. Well,
so that's the structure of fragmentation of self and how it kind of works.
No, I'll be honest with you. I've not seen it explained so clearly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes. Brilliant.
I understand what happens there. I felt it myself. I pulled myself back together, over time. But I haven't. You've articulated an awful lot of what goes on there, and it's very, very helpful, I think, to have it spelled out that way. Okay, AI.
Brilliant. AI. Okay.
Inserts, seals.
Okay, let's look at the inserts. The inserts first. So when we're looking at these situations of fragmentation, these initial phasings or these memories of fragmentation will be linked back to a root issue, and this can go beyond our time, beyond this life. It can go way, way, way back. But these initial situations can be reprinted through an AI system, like a negative AI system or negative AI machinery that gets churned out and refed into those traumatic incidents that try and destabilize and override your conscious awareness. What these inserts do is they basically try to install fear within your light body. And when we kind of feel into that fear, that random fear that just appeared out of nowhere, it looks like anxiety, it looks like kind of nervousness, but there's no real reason behind it. Oh shit, I'm just having an image of my car driving off a cliff and into a river, but I'm not even driving my car. I'm on the sofa at the moment and trying to understand why I'm having this irrational fear that usually actually comes in completely numb, completely silent, until you kind of clock onto it and think into it. And that's when the eruption of fear comes in. So this mystery anxiety level will be using imagery, and I've used that image specifically now that I'm understanding, because I used to get quite deep fear of driving. And historically, my dad has had multiple car crashes, and one of the times he actually drove off a cliff by accident. He survived, thank God. But I get that same cellular memory fear imprint coming back in through this kind of ancestral memory that is then transmitted down to me. The artificial nature of it knows that I've got that memory within me, and then utilizes that memory or a scene or scenario similar to that and exacerbates the feeling behind it. And this then blows up the fear spectrum. And this is to shut you down. It's to close down your frequency. It's to stop you from kind of working now. So this holographic insert is a kind of warfare type. That is.
Where does this, for people who are unaware, who puts this in place? Where does this originate from?
Okay, that's a very good question. It's not an easy answer either. There's multiple layers.
It isn't actually. So you know, we could spend.
We can spend a long time doing that.
We could spend a long time doing it, but you know, maybe in 2 or 3 sentences, just a quick summation of.
Okay, I'll try.
The full unconsciousness beings who are behind this.
Okay, so what I can start with is a race that has latched into our universe, outside of our universe, and utilizes this one as a feeding tube for them. They are inorganic. They do not hold Christ intelligence. They are kind of void of that, actually. And they latched into our universe to feed their own. And they do this by creating such devastation and such war that it's
the fragmentation, the separation.
Yeah, big layers of fragmentation and separation. And then they latched into that and started to feed on that.
They feed these low vibrational energies.
Yeah. So ultimately what they do is they try and keep us in that low state of awareness in order to feed themselves. So when we get these holographic inserts, it then acts as a feeding tube to them until we become self-aware, until we become aware of it. And it does hold like a kind of artificial metallic subtle electrocution energy within it that you can kind of discern, okay, this it's not painful, but it's not comfortable. And what that does is it keeps us in a state of stress and anxiety and kind of for me it worked into like a level of ADHD as well. And that pulls and draws out back up into this negative structure. Now, another part to this is the overlay to our organic universe is that they are trying to create an artificial universe that can feed off it. So this overlays to our organic universe and then has a set of systems that it pulls the life force out through the artificial tree of life and also the clip off, which is the black tree of life. So they use both of these structures to pull.
These energetic geometries, aren't they?
Yeah, energetic geometries, but what it also sits with is a DNA template as well. So they use the DNA template and the artificial tree of life, which is overlaid to your organic tree of life and your organic DNA template, that is then pulling the information through, because that DNA template holds a lot of your information, holds a lot of your memory and your essence within that. So that then filter feeds back up into there. And I think the real question is here is why is this happening? And what I was kind of shown ultimately is there is a war that is going on, and it is an artificial intelligence timeline war. that artificial intelligence timeline war is trying to take over the organic universe worlds ultimately, and then this feeds back into a kind of supercomputer, or this inorganic mind. So this inorganic mind basically creates an artificial hologram that is a kind of destruction dread timeline, or not dread timeline, but a dread universe that kind of is filter feeding again back to kind of make itself live, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of like it needs to pull on organic structures in order to
Yeah,
have the energy to
to
run itself,
sustain. Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But it works with a load of closed loop systems. So the light that it's being drawn upon filter feeds into this system, and then it runs and recircuits over and over
Mm.
again. So
Mm.
it becomes stuck in a state of being.
Mm.
Um, and this light then becomes miasmic. It becomes like dead light energy and heavy amounts of trauma. And that dead light energy miasma is then being fed back into R1 to destabilize the mind,
Yeah.
and to kind of create pain.
Yeah.
So when I was asking about this information, I was taken outside of this universe and to look at the multiverse perspective of it. And
Mm.
it actually latches into multiple universes, not just the Wheezin one. It comes into not just R1, sorry, it comes into many different ones. And the end result, I actually feel, is millions of years later,
Mm.
is that the machinery and AI dismantles itself.
Yeah.
Or this is the highest kind of potential of it, is that it becomes aware, but then realizes what it's done, and then just like dismantles itself basically,
Mm.
to become sentient,
Yeah. Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of trying to get my head around that a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So it's very complex.
I think, it's important to say, I mean, it all sounds very scary, sort of rampant
Mm.
time machines and, bloody
Mm-hmm.
blah, sucking on us all and things like this. It all sounds very scary. And we are, a 3D humanity has been very much, it's a bit like, a farm, and we've been made into the farm animals.
Mm-hmm.
That is not who we are.
No.
As a race, and that is not our evolutionary path. We have been hijacked from that by
Mm-hmm.
this,
Mm-hmm.
and that hijacking is effectively we're in the middle of a rescue mission at the moment, really, aren't we? So it's just, I want to take the fear out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Humanity, once we can reclaim our proper template, and it's what people like Felix are doing. They're helping us get back to that sense of who we are and our wholeness. Even if you don't understand how that's happening, people like Felix do, and are helping us. And as a consequence, of that, once we start to step back into the wholeness of our organic templating, and the reality of what it is to be human, what it is to be a divine human,
Mm-hmm.
this stuff falls away.
Mm-hmm.
It falls away.
It does, absolutely. But
You step out of the victim role.
what also happens when you become aware of the structure as well is that it loses its power over you.
Yeah.
And this is the way to kind of heal from it, is you become self-aware of it, and then it cannot kind of work its way through you.
Yeah.
There is another kind of, I don't think I'll go into that just yet because it's very complicated. So working through the root trauma issues that are the things that are binding you to this AI system is the kind of way forward to unlock yourself. So when you kind of work through these traumas and remember that they're using your own memory to weaponize against you.
Yeah.
When you realize that, dealing with those memories, you're not going to be affected by that.
Yeah.
So remembering that that is what they're weaponizing against you, that's how they're targeting you. So if you're afraid of your memories, then they're going to have the upper hand. But if you're not,
Yeah. If
then
you
you're fine.
looked at them, dealt with them, integrated them,
Mm-hmm.
taken the charge out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that goes through the polarity integration stuff. So
yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful. I mean, it's been quite an ask to get you to kind of sum that up very briefly. Um, time is skipping on, so
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about the New Earth and the New Earth template, because this is us stepping back onto our evolutionary path, isn't it?
Okay. Where do you want to go with this first? What is coming, or what? How do you want me to kind of?
Well, we're in a movement. We're in a movement from not just one dimension to the next, aren't we, at the moment, but from one
Right. So we're
next.
looking at the
So,
evolutionary
so,
perspective within
so
it.
we're changing our template because we're moving from one density into the next density,
Yeah.
having to transmute our underlying morphogenetic field to
Okay.
match
Yeah.
the frequencies.
hmm
But yeah,
hmm
where it's going.
Okay. So where it's going, the first thing that I'm kind of seeing at the moment are these kind of like isolated villages.
Mm,
And this will be like a kind of split separation from the city life, going back into like the kind of natural dwellings, I suppose. Now, this can be literal, but it can also be metaphoric for the way that we kind of think and how we actually want to kind of step away from technology and how we want to kind of revert back to the love of the land and these kinds of ways of being. Now, as we kind of reconnect into that, the land mass and the kind of organic network of consciousness that is the grids, this then acts as a kind of opening point. Oh, okay. So that actually transits the awareness to look at the world in a very different way from where you were. So this repositions a lot of the congested belief systems. But what actually happens with that jump from one world to another is there is a whole load of trauma that kind of comes about from that, this kind of technocratic world, and modern civilization back to something a bit more normal or a
mm,
bit more kind of relaxed. That then the breakaway from that civilization to this one is, I'm actually seeing that as a big bridge point. It's a trifurcated bridge point to the ones still within the city life, or this kind of world. Now, what I'm also kind of seeing beyond that as well. That's really interesting. I've just picked up on loads of fear that's just came up over that then. So this kind of separation of worlds and separation of kind of lifestyles and realities, that fear-based city life living is the push. It crunches and crunches and crunches and squeezes and squeezes and squeezes to move people into that other way of thinking, another way of being, because they just had enough.
yes.
And that it becomes so controlled and so tight that it erupts basically.
Mm,
Now that New Earth living is about coming back to our true presentation. It is coming back to Lemuria. It's coming back to our connection with the earth and our kind of our resonance really. So I feel like that's what they want to kind of say about that, because there is so much more I could talk about.
mm,
But this, I'm seeing these as like kind of crystal houses and things like that at the
yeah,
moment. And I think at the moment, this change point of where we were to where we're going is about the return to the earth.
yeah,
It's the return to kind of nature. It's the return to kind of organic, rhythmic patterns that correlate with earth to sun,
yeah,
um, and to the grid. So it's a kind of like a homeostasis
yeah.
to the organic.
It's
Yeah.
coming back into balance, and it's coming back into, I mean, I have
Mm.
always understood that our true role, humanity's true role on the earth, is to be guardians of the earth and to cherish it, all life on the earth, all beings, all forms on the earth. They're under our care and nurturance, and in the hijacking that has happened to us as a race and the digression that has happened to us as a race, we've been separated from that. And the process that we're going through now is putting us back on that evolutionary path to reclaim that way of being again, which is a much more organic, much gentler, a much more unity consciousness. You know, we've all heard all is one, we've all heard that, but it makes that a reality.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we're moving towards that. It's so exciting.
It is, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa, well, I think my mind is officially blown.
Brilliant. My job is done.
Yeah, I mean, I can't thank you enough. As I say, you know, you've been very open, very honest with us. You've shared a lot of very, very high level information with us that, you know, some people may struggle to integrate, but I can guarantee every single one of you out there, what Felix has done is he's planted loads of seeds, and those seeds will burst into life at some point. So, you know, just keep listening. And I'll put up your information
thank you.
how they can get hold of you. You do once a month you offer a freebie online meditation, which you can get on Felix's mailing list basically, and he emails you about that, and you can just sign up for it. Anything else going on?
We have the psychic healing and development class, which I'm probably going to do it as my last one on Thursday.
Yeah,
that's at 6 p.m. I've got a 12/12 gateway and a winter solstice gateway this month as well. And then I also offer one-to-one sessions, and I also do package sessions, which is more developed towards kind of getting you from A to B. We work into a kind of training program kind of thing. And then in March, with your dear self, we've also got the Azurite retreat, which is in the Lake District, and all the information is on my website for that. So
I'll put the link to that. So that's a one. It's a few. We're in the Lake District in a retreat centre for a few days. With a program of works, as it were.
Absolutely.
To hopefully send you back in a bit of a change space.
One will try. We shall try.
Absolutely. Well, you know, bless you, Felix.
Thank you.
I mean, thank you. Felix is a gift to this world at this time. He really is. So I can't, you know, I can only say to you, take advantage of him in the nicest possible way.
Absolutely. Definitely.
His gifts are you know, few and far. They're not found easily, and they will help to accelerate your own development and your own awakening and your own opening up to the wondrous being that you truly are. So the sooner you get there, the better.
Thank you. Lovely.
Thank you. Is there anything final you want to say before we wrap up, or
have a wonderful Christmas, everyone. And an even more smashing new year. Next year is going to be wonderful. It's going to be very, very fast paced. I mean, we've already gone into a peak acceleration of light at the moment, so now we're just kind of going even further, even faster.
Enjoy the ride, isn't it?
Enjoy the ride. You've absolutely got this. We can all do this, and you wouldn't be here if you couldn't. So take that and put that on your jacket with a badge. Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Sarah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.